Welcome everybody to this What's New Inventor 2022 webinar. We're presented by myself, Aldrin Boyd, and as well as Carl van Rooyen. Okay, so just a little bit about ourselves. We've been in this industry for about 34 years in combined experience. We are both on the manufacturing side, so we do things like AutoCAD mechanical, AutoCAD plant. So everything that you'll find in the manufacturing collections. Our forte is on the Inventor software, so that's Autodesk's flagship software. And with that, with all the add-ons that you've got there, your CAM products, Inventor CAM, the Nastran InCAD, as well as the nesting capabilities of Inventor as well. Both Carl and I are AutoCAD and Inventor certified professionals, so we've done our exams. If you do want to become certified professional, I think it's quite a great thing to do. There isn't an exam that you can do. There's 2 hours time and everything like that. So if you do need to do that, then you can just check with our salespeople on how to get about going through that. We have both certified instructors. So if you do come for any training with us, you'll see that we will teach you the way that Autodesk likes you to be taught. A very adult-centric teaching style. And we've both presented at the Autodesk University Extension in Joburg and Cape Town. If you guys haven't been to one of these things, I think it's very, very worthwhile as you get to network, find industry, people in the industry that you can sort of bounce ideas off, and then learn new functionality and new workflows that Autodesk has introduced. I know that a lot of times we get stuck in in the same ways that we work because we've learned something over 10 years, over 5 years, and that new functionality that Autodesk sort of puts into the software to help us improve on everything, it sort of gets lost in the wayside. So we haven't had a physical Autodesk University Extension for the last year, obviously because of COVID, but there are ones online as well. So if you guys do see any of that, then please, I implore you to go and sort of go on there and actually learn the new functionality that Autodesk has brought out. Okay, so the agenda for today. So we're going to take a look at model states in both the parts and assemblies. Now, this is something very, very new in Inventor. So Autodesk has introduced this, and it's also been a very much a push from the users as well. So if you haven't been to the Inventor Idea Station, I would suggest taking a look at it. And putting up any ideas that you've got that you think that will be able to increase your productivity, enhance just your own workflow. So Autodesk does look at this, and a lot of the new stuff that they do put into Inventor is from that idea station. So it's very much customer driven. There are some simplification improvements as well. So we'll take a look at how we just allowing Inventor to simplify different components, maybe for your IP reasons or just to make the model or assembly interact a little bit quicker with your PC. Interoperability with both Revit and Fusion 360. So you'll see how, the world's getting smaller and smaller, and, we are now having to interact with different software as well. So we'll take a look at how Inventor interacts with Revit and Fusion 360 and the enhancements that Autodesk has done. Then productivity and performance, that's what we want with Inventor. We want to become more productive with Inventor with every release, and we want the performance to increase with every release as well. And we'll show how Autodesk has done that with Inventor. And then drawing enhancements, that's something that we always need. We can create all the 3D models that you want in the world. If you can't get your drawings out, in a quickly and timely fashion, then it's all for naught. And then we'll go into a Q&A session. Okay, so model states. Just a brief overview of model states. So with your model states, one nice thing about it is that it's multiple representations of a file in one file. So if you've worked with iParts or you've worked with iAssemblies, you'll know that once to create all of those different configurations or files, you'd have to create members. And that's, if you've got 40 different configurations of a part, take a look at a bolt, for instance. M8, M10, 12, 20, you'd have to create an individual part for each one of those. But now, unlike iParts, with model states, it'll just be everything in one file. You've got different states of a component as well. So take a look at a spring. You could have it compressed and uncompressed, once again, in one file. Each model state has its own I properties. So with those I properties, you could have different part numbers, different materials, and different descriptions, for example. What it also allows you to do is allows for the states to be linked between your assemblies and parts. So you'll see this when Carl does the demo, how when you create a part and you create a model state in your part, you're able to extract that model state and use it, share it between the part and the assembly that you're working in. And if you're using the API or iLogic, you'll know it is fully now supported within both the API and iLogic. So you'll be able to keep on working like you would maybe with your level of detail, but now you'll just be moving over to your model states. So in the part files, part models, sorry, just a couple of examples that we've got over here. So in your manufacturing process, you could represent a part file or part model as cast versus machining. So you could have your cast part and your machining part both in there. So you could represent both of them maybe for your drawing environment later. Then you can do your families of parts, as I said. So this is actually an iPart alternative. It doesn't mean that iParts are still not there. They are still there. You can still use iPart. This is just an alternative to iParts if you want to start using your model states. And then maybe you could have some sheet metal fold operations in different different degrees. So you've got 40 folds in a sheet metal component, and you want to see how it's going to go through your different stages. So maybe it's going to go from one bending machine to another bending machine. So you've got your one model which shows it maybe in bending machine 1, and then it's obviously going to take that folder component, take it to your next bending machine, and then do the operations over there. Then you've also got your model states for your assembly models, so different assembly configurations. Now, as I said, it does work very much like your iParts, and for obviously assemblies with the iAssemblies, where you can actually go into your Excel spreadsheet as iParts and then configure it over there. So the workflow isn't too dissimilar. It's just the way everything works in the background that has changed quite drastically. Weldment preparation, so you can have obviously your design, and then you're going to prep it for weldments. Obviously taking away material from to put a weld in between two components, and then also alternate assembly positions. So you could have maybe a left hand or right hand side, shown over there. And once again, the biggest thing about this is that everything is sitting in one assembly or part. So just bringing down the number of files that you are working with, so that you can manage everything quite easily. Okay, from here we're going to go into the demo with, and Carl will show you how this is done.
Good morning, gentlemen. So let me get over to Inventor, and we're going to look at the model states for a part first. And so in this case here we have an impeller, and this impeller has a parameter that will drive the number of vanes in the impeller. And if we look on the left-hand side of our, we look at our browser here, we'll see that we have a new node. We've got the model states node. And in this case here, our first model state is just the master model state. What you can do here is you can right-click on the master and copy that. That would create a new model state using the master as a default. Or you can right-click on the actual folder and say new, and that will then create a model state. Now, for the model state itself, you can basically activate the model state, and then you'll see a pencil next to it, and that would mean you're currently editing that model state. If you click on the pencil at the top, that will edit all model states. So that would be a change that happens to all of those states. For this model state here, we could go ahead and change the parameter value for the blade number. So there, 20, I'm going to make that 21 for this model state. Hit done, and that then updates to 21. And like Aldred said, this can be done through a spreadsheet. So I can go here, right-click on the model states folder, edit via spreadsheet, and that will then open up the spreadsheet pretty much like your parts environment, and you would then be able to make those changes to the document. So In this case here, because I've only changed the blade number, that has come through as the only parameter that's changed. Maybe what I can do here is put in a part number, let's say PN20, and sorry, let's call that PN20, so that's the state name, PN, say, 21. Let's grab this, let's put that 20 over there, 21. And so I'm just going to do this quite simply. Let's go and drag and drop that down to increase the number of blades. Save this and then close. Give Inventor a second or two, that will generate the states. And so we can see now the states, PN20 all the way down to 25. And clicking on a state will then activate that model. Now, each state model has its own R properties. So you can right click on that state and go to R properties. And let's say I want to do something like change the part number. So you'll see here, well, there's a stock number 20. This should be 25. It's okay. That will update that stock number. Once again, I could jump back into the spreadsheet. And that column, because it has now been changed between states, that column will be added here as well. So we could go ahead and use Excel to update those columns, save and close, and back into Inventor. So now we have various different states of this file. You're able to cycle between them, but on the hard drive, this is only a single file. We can have a look here. There's the file name there for that document. Then moving on to the assembly states, what we can do here is we go to assemblies, we'll open up the subassembly, and looking at the subassembly here, what we have is we have the same thing. We have the model states in this assembly, and for this we have two model states. We have one for 0 units. I double click on that. That activates and actually removes some of the files. We can see here on the left-hand side, some of those parts have been suppressed, so it can handle suppression. I double click on 2 units. It will then create a state where we have 2 of these suction units aligned here. Same thing here, we can take that, let's say we take the 2 units, we copy it, and we can then update that to, let's say, a 3-unit state. And the nice thing about the states is that you can either activate that state and then go and find the different components. Let's say this component here, we expand that out, look at these states, and we can see that this component has a 2-unit, 3-unit, and 4-unit state. Now, that could be quite time-consuming to go through and try adjust each one to match the state. However, if your states have the same name, in this case 3-unit, and the other components have a 3-unit state as well, what you can actually do is on the productivity drop-down is you can link model states. This will scan through the assembly, and it will look at the name of the current model state for the assembly, and it will then activate the selected model state. So in this case here, 3-unit, I'm going to grab 3-unit and link those model states. It's going to ask me to save and continue. And now when I activate the 3-unit model state for the assembly, it will go through each component and it will activate the 3-unit state for those components as well. So this is a nice quick way to create that state in the assembly. While you're busy designing your component, you design those states into each component, and then in the assembly you're able to link those states together. So last little thing I'll do here quickly is I'm going to grab in the Excel spreadsheet, you'll see a lot more columns here. I'm going to grab that, drag it down, and we've got 3 units. Basically going to replace that with 4 units. And we could actually grab each individual column, drag it down here quickly. And basically that is another way in which you can update your states. And once that's closed and back into Inventor, there's a 4-unit state. You double click on that and activate that state for all the components within the assembly. So that's a quick rundown of the different ways in which we can use state. There are definitely many more ways in which it can be used, but this one here, just to summarize, we can create various design iterations or changes or like families of parts, or we can have it control an actual assembly layout as far as suppression of components. It can even control relationships, joints or constraints. And so there's quite a bit of information that can be edited inside of each of these states. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand back to Aldrin to go on with the next section.
Okay, so simplification improvements. Now, I know that in the past I've seen guys try to simplify components, maybe because you've got some IP that needs to be hidden when you are working with different suppliers, or just when you're working with really, really large assemblies. And in previous inventors, there's a lot of different places that you could go and simplify things. So what sort of Autodesk is trying to do is just put everything into one place, as you'll see with these I properties these property palettes that you've got over here. So over the recent recent years or recent versions, you've seen that all the old dialog boxes are now being put into properties palettes. Now, this simplification replaces both the shrink wrap and shrink wrap substitution. So if you're looking for that in 2022, you will not find it. I think a simplified command is right on the right-hand side of the panel that we've got. So going to this simplification properties palette over here, obviously you'll choose your source, and you can change either model state, design view, or position view. And then you can say, create an envelope, and that envelope would be either cylindrical or, a square cylinder. And then you can, exclude components in the simplification as well. And you can see over there, you can remove by size, so the max size that you kind of wanted, or you can go measure it, or you can go and click on separate components that you want to exclude in your simplification. Removing details, okay, so you can see there hole, fillet, chamfer, pocket. I think emboss is new in 2022. And besides removing details, you can also preserve details as well. So if you find that there's a couple of fillets or maybe a couple of holes that you actually need, in the design, because it's quite pertinent. Maybe you're taking this out to Revit, for instance, and you need the pipe connection, components to be preserved. Then you can put that into your simplification as well. The one thing that I do like about this is presets, and this is actually going for a lot of the different features that you've got in Inventor's presets, is where, take for instance your hole preset, if you're going to do a certain type of hole with a certain countersink or counter bore depth, then maybe you've got it's fully threaded or maybe partially threaded, and you keep on using that hole because that's that's what your machine is, your drilling machine is set up to. Then you can save it as a preset and not have to reconfigure it every single time, because it can be a lot of clicks, and as you know, a lot of clicks is a lot of time, and a lot of time is a lot of money. Now, so with the presets for your simplification, if there's the holes that the certain holes that you need to auto detect and take away, and certain chamfers, you can preset that in. Now, another output that is new, or something else that is new, is outputting to a Revit file. And this Revit file, because Autodesk is now bringing these two software packages closer together and integrating it more tightly, you're going to see a lot of this kind of Revit stuff popping out of here. And outputting to Revit is a big win for the integration between both the build and the manufacturing environment. Then interoperability. So if you haven't known about this, a couple of versions ago, Autodesk started to bring in a workflow between Revit and Inventor, so that if you needed to use components that you design and manufacture for the architects or maybe the structural engineers, they started bringing this kind of link between the two. Previously, or in 2021, and previously, it was just a Revit family file. So if you know about Revit, Revit family file is like our content center libraries. Now you can actually create a Revit file from that. So it gives you a little bit more functionality. I'm not going to go too much into depth with it, but it does give the architect more control over what they do with that file than just a normal Revit family file. And with this better support for the BIM Revit workflows, you see that you can actually, from Revit, you can actually take a portion of that Revit model and bring it into Inventor. And then from that, model your Inventor components and make it parametric with whatever you brought in from Revit. So if your Revit model changes, say if it's a wall moves or a door moves, and you've said that maybe there's an awning that has to come over the door and it has to move with the door, if the Revit model updates, it'll then go update whatever you've made parametric in your Inventor model. Then from your Inventor model, when you take it back into Revit, it will place it in the exact place, or the coordinate system that you need it to be. So there's no, oh, I've got to move it 5 meters to the left and maybe 2 meters in the y direction because it's not in the correct place. If you use this Revit Inventor workflow, you'll find that it'll place in the correct sort of spacing for your Revit file over there. So you've got a nice circular workflow between Inventor and Revit. And then the interoperability between Fusion 360 and Inventor. So if you didn't know, if you are working on the manufacturing collections, the product and design manufacturing collections, you do have access to Fusion 360 as well. And I could say, well, why use Fusion 360 when we've got Inventor? One of the big things is generative design. So if you are designing something in Inventor and you want to maybe do something really out the ballpark there, something really fancy or very aesthetic looking with a different manufacturing process, maybe additive manufacturing. But you can't really think of, or you want the computer to do the thinking for you. Let's say not, you can't really think, you want the computer to do the thinking for you. We can then export it through to Fusion. Now, in 2021 and before that, it was a very manual process. You take your model, you can either directly open it up into a Fusion 360 using the AnyCAD technology, or you could take it and work in your Fusion's team folder from your desktop connector, and from the desktop connector, which works very much like a Dropbox, it would then upload it to the cloud, your Autodesk account, and then you'd be able to access it directly from Fusion 360. But that's a lot of copying, duplications, and. So, and now what we can do is there's a button directly inside on the panel in Inventor, a Send to Fusion button. Click on that, it sends it to your desktop connector in Fusion Team sends it up to the cloud and opens it up in Fusion 360. So it just automates that process where you'd be manually copying and moving and opening it up in Fusion 360. Other things you could use the Inventor file for would be 3D printing. So Fusion 360 is very, very good at that, as well as some CNC as well. So if you're not using your Inventor CAM and maybe you're sending it to someone else who's using Fusion 360 for the CAM portion of your workflow, then you can just send it to them. They can open up in Fusion 360 and continue to work with it. Okay, and now we're going to go on to the demo portion of that.
That's it. So I'm going to do the demo portion here quickly just on some of that simplification, and then we are going to go into just a short video that will help clear up and show a bit more of the simplification functionality, as well as that Revit to Inventor interoperability and passing information back and forth between the two. So I'm just going to go here to Inventor, and in Inventor we're going to open up the simplification. So let me go ahead here to the simplification. I wonder if my mouse will open up that part. And so what we're going to do is look at a component here, be a gearbox or a pump, And there's quite a lot of information that's on here. There's a lot of fillets, a lot of detail that would not necessarily be needed inside of a, let's say, a higher level of the assembly. Maybe you're looking at the entire factory floor. And if you have 10, 20 of these on the factory floor, you're going to end up with quite a lot of detail and a lot of resources required on your computer to show all this detail. So you may want to simplify this, and this also kind of falls under the model states that we spoke about earlier. We can create different model states and then simplify each of those model states. So for this example, we have a state called fine. A double click on that, then that's pretty much the same as the master. But then we also have a medium state. You go into the medium state, and you can see that this has been defeatured. Some of the features, the fillets, have been removed, but we can still see the general shape of the component. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take that medium state, copy it, and create a coarse state. And part of this coarse state here, after activating it, is we're going to go ahead and use the simplify options here. Now, we've got simplify in the assembly. We could simplify the assembly out. That's the dialog box that we saw in the presentation. Or we can open up a part and then run simplification on the part itself. Now, this simplification panel here is not there by default. You do need to go here to the right-hand side, click the drop-down, and for some reason I can't get to mine right now, but you would click the drop-down and it would show the simplification panel there for you to be able to add that panel in. So in this case here, I'm simplifying the part. We've got some options to remove detail completely. That would be used to remove things like fillets or chamfers, fill voids if you wanted to fill any openings within the part or voids. In this case, what I want to do is I want to define two envelopes. So we go very quickly here. My Inventor seems to have frozen up here. No, okay, let me just quickly and this is the issue with doing live demos. My Inventor has bombed out here. Decided to not let me click on anything at the top. Okay, let me just see if it's the presentation that's maybe interfering. No, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump straight to the video. Apologies for the technical issues. Close Inventor. I can relaunch that while we go through the presentation. So let me go back here to the presentation. We'll see some simplification in the presentation as well in the video. So as Eldred was mentioning that you want to be able to simplify the model before sending it through to Revit. So I'm just going to pause the video here. What we're seeing here is the Revit model inside of Revit, and this is what the architect would have. And with Inventor being able to import that or reference that Revit model using any CAD, you can bring in a portion of that model that you can then place your machinery into. And you can see if you are having any clashes with the Revit model itself. So you can check ahead of time if you're going to have any clashes. So if we have a look here, we can see the packaging line placed in with the essentially the underlay from the Revit model to show the floor space. So just play this along a little bit. We can see on the left-hand side we've got the simplification menu, and they're busy simplifying this model down to be able to export out to Revit. And now because the Revit file has been imported or referenced, this assembly is placed in relation to that. So once again, like Alfred was saying, when you export the Revit file out from Inventor, the coordinate system is the same. So it's placed in the correct location. So if we have a look here, busy importing the Revit file. So this is the reference process to bring that file in. You can see there is an instance of that file going into there. The assembly has been positioned inside of model, and then a portion of the assembly here has been opened up. And on the left-hand side here, we see the simplification menu for the assembly. Now at the top, you're able to choose a model state. So you'll be able to choose which model state you want to export. You still have your view and position representations as well. So you can export a specific view and position representation. And there we have our options, as Aldred explained, being able to replace envelopes, exclude components by size. We'll actually see here right at the bottom, they're going to export a Revit file. And then if I catch this, they are excluding any components that are below a certain size when measured across the diagonal of its bounding box. So you can see here, I think this is an American data set, so it's 5 inches. Any part that has a diagonal dimension smaller than 5 will get removed from the model. You can see all these little nuts and bolts. Those would all be taken out because we don't need to see those when we're looking at the factory as a whole. Apologies for that. As Aldred mentioned, we can also choose to exclude specific features. So exclude holes that are smaller than the mounting holes on the feet, preserving those features for use in the Revit model, let's say for drilling in the slab or position. Then going through the Revit export to export that file out. In this instance, exported to Revit, however, instead of simplifying the files down, the parts are being replaced with an envelope. So this just shows a bounding box for each of the components. So this removes any IP that is within those components completely, and you're basically giving the architect just the spatial requirement for your machine or for your layout. So this entire packaging line, we then get that required space without giving away any intellectual property. And the same can be done for a packaging station or for a portion of the machine. In this case, using presets to choose different levels of detail to retain for the export. And then once exported, it can be brought back into Revit. So we're linking that Revit file back into Revit, and it comes back in with that coordinate system. And the export from Inventor also retains the information, the bill of materials, so that the bill of quantity inside of Revit, and each of those components can be tagged within Revit. Here we're seeing parts being added to the Inventor assembly and the Revit export being updated. It's the same Revit file inside of Revit. The user there just updates that link, and those components back into Revit. So there's that link that is always maintained. So as you're changing your Inventor assembly, you then choose to update the Revit model, and that new information is sent through to the Revit model. The architect can then do the same on their side. Okay, so that would bring us to the end of that demo. Aldred, I'm just going to quickly get my Inventor up and running before you start the next session, so that I'm at least ready for that. So let me cover that. Okay, Aldred, handing over back to you.
Okay, so as with every release of Inventor, we've got productivity and performance enhancements. So as you can see, this is a graph from 2018, but Autodesk is continually improving on things like graphics, drawings, your assemblies. So, sorry, call back the presentation. There we go. Okay, so continually, parts and assemblies, drawings and graphics. And it just gets better and better and better. You don't want to be sitting there trying to create a drawing, and waiting until it gets generated. Assemblies, constraining assemblies. When you constrain a part in an assembly to another part, it then runs through all the constraints that you've already placed in there, and it checks to see if it actually works or not, and then it'll either accept it or deny it because it's conflicting with something else. An example, and I'm just going to, something that we've tested out, here at Micrographics between Inventor 2020 and Inventor 2021. So, we got a big assembly with a lot of pipes, and we try to place it onto a 2D drawing in 2020. So we did that, and just to give you a comparison of the hardware specs that we had, it was running 32 gigs of RAM. I think it had a Quadro 2000 card in it and an i7 processor, and we actually had to update that RAM up to 64 gigs because it was running out of RAM while it's trying to process this drawing. So it was a large assembly with lots of pipes, and we put it onto a drawing. It took about 6 or 7 minutes just to generate that drawing on your IDW. Then when you try to move the view, it took quite a while. I mean, probably up to like 30 or 40 seconds just to move it. It was like very, very jerky. Now we then obviously uninstalled 2020, installed Inventor 2021. Same 64 gigs of RAM. The other hardware was also the same, and we put that same part into an IDW, and it took about 3 or 4 seconds to generate the drawing, and moving the view was seamless. We actually took it down to 32 gigs again. We took out 32 gigs, and it was exactly the same. So it was using much less resources, just going from Inventor 2020 to Inventor 2021. So this is also something that the users do ask for, and Autodesk just comes to the party every year by making Inventor quicker and making you more productive. So with the performance, what you'll notice is there's new graphics technology in here. So we're using the graphics card more when working with Inventor. If you've ever noticed, sometimes when you are working, if you look at your control panel, you'll see there that the processor is going mad, but your graphics card is sitting idle. So then I started putting more of the functionality to work on the graphics card and not just on the processor. And just one of the things is displaying wireframe and silhouette edges much more on the graphics card. And then just utilizing the hardware more efficiently. Things like in-place editing. Sometimes in 2021, if you've got a large assembly, you want to edit in place. In an assembly, it kind of stuttered a little bit. Visibility improvements. So that's things like moving it in animation. So you're animating a sub-assembly in an assembly. It's kind of jerky, or sort of doesn't look quite so nice. They've improved that, and then also just opening and closing documents is quicker. Now, you might think, oh, is that really a performance issue? Think about, if you're working on a lot of different components, the time it takes to open and close, that can add up very, very quickly. So if it's taking, maybe as a once-off, yes, 2 seconds doesn't seem like a long time, but if you're doing 1,000 parts, 2,000 seconds, and now all of a sudden, you are spending a lot of time just waiting for something to open and close. So this is actually quite a nice little improvement that Autodesk has done. Then on the productivity, I mentioned a little bit earlier on about these property panels. So everything's going to these property panels now as well. If you've worked in AutoCAD, it's something that we've already really seen, and it's very nice to be able to hide or have a property panel over there instead of these dialog boxes that keep on popping up all over the place. It's dockable, which is quite, so you'll just have one panel. And if you look at the properties panel in the top right-hand corner there, there's a little plus button over there. I can drag and drop, say, my model browser or my iLogic browser. So you'll just have little different tabs at the top, which will then click on each one to see the different property panel. Very much top-down approach. Okay, so you work from the top down. It's like the ribbon that you got at the top of the Inventor. You work from left to right, and work from top to down in your property panel. You'll see now how you will not miss anything. You don't have to jump onto different tabs on a dialog box, anything like that. Warning notifications also very, very nice. Okay, so if there's a warning of any sort, it'll highlight in red. Okay, so if a lot of the times when we're working and we're trying to create a feature, you'll click OK and it'll say failed. Now in the dialog box, you couldn't very easily see what failed. If I'm looking at holes, for instance, you look at a counter bore, maybe the counterboard diameter was smaller than the actual diameter of the hole that you're creating. It wasn't very easy to see in the dialog box, but in the in your properties panel, it'll actually come up and highlight in red. And I'll say it'll highlight, okay, look, the counterboard diameter, little question, sort of exclamation mark, red triangle. Okay, that's a problem. What the new dialog box conversion to property panel would be your fillet. So in this fillet, face fillet, and full round fillet all have their own properties panel. So if you sort of kind of get used to this now, because everything is going to be changed to the properties palette. Yes, it is a little bit difficult at first, but you do get used to it quite quickly, and you do get much quicker in your actual your modeling approach. In the assemblies, what you'll have noticed now is there's a new little icon that's been placed next to it. And this is something that's also been asked for quite a lot from the community, is how do I tell if my part is fully constrained or not? In the past, what you do is you'd go to the, sorry, Carl, help me out again, I can't remember the icon. It was degrees of freedom. Yeah. So you go to the degrees of freedom, and you'd see, are the arrows there, the transformational arrows or the rotational arrows. And, as you constrained it, they would disappear as you constrained it more and more as the degrees of freedom got taken away. Now what we've got is we've got these little dots. So I think it's a black dot, an empty dot, and then I think just a stripe. So those are the three different ones. When working in this, you can also hide fully constrained components. So then you actually can see, if you've got like 10,000 parts, hide fully constrained, maybe goes down to 4,000. Yes, it's still a lot, but you can at least then go and know exactly which ones it is and start working through those to fully constrain them over there. Okay, and then in assemblies as well, you've got some instance properties. So with this over here, you could, in this drawing over here, you can see there's sort of four motors. And what you could do with this is, even though they're the same assembly, you could maybe differentiate them by putting in a instance property and maybe giving it a tag number. So if one of them maybe breaks out in the field, then you know which one to go to, which has got that tag component, that instance property, which differentiates which one is placed where. And this property is available for both annotations and your parts list as well, as you can see in the diagram over there, the bill of materials. Okay, then let's take a look at that. Up to you, Cole.
Okay, great, thanks. Let's get Inventor up and running. Hopefully this time I can select everything. So what I'm going to do quickly is just jump back to that simplification demo. It's quite a quick one, so I think let's just do that, and then we'll move on to the productivity and performance. So I'm opening up the part that I had here, and let's have a look at that. Simplify, there we go, define envelopes. So just to go back to that simplification, in this case here, what we wanted to do was basically replace information in the model to really simplify it down. So in this case here, just taking that body of the this gearbox and really simplifying it down, grabbing faces on the component and choosing to resize, and creating these primitives to replace that component. And this was in the, see, I didn't save it, so I've done this in the medium level of, in the medium state here, but I could have done that in a coarse state. And once again, going back to the assembly, I'll just go ahead and open that up. Okay, that's,
your Inventor knows it's Friday.
Yeah, Friday is once a weekend.
Had a long week, yeah.
Yeah, I've just noticed there's an issue with my PC with using the open command. It takes a few seconds. So anyway, you create that model state. You can do the simplification for that model state. And you can then have different levels, basically like creating different level of details, but for a part. Those states would represent the various amounts of detail that you actually want to show within the part. And as we mentioned with the states, you can then call on those different states and combining basically in this case the simplification with those states. Okay, there we go. So if I open up, I'm just going to open up the end result here for the assembly. We're able to change between those different states. So there's a fine, medium state, and the coarse state. And in that coarse state, you can see the simplified body of the gearbox here. So I just wanted to go back and kind of just finish off that one. We looked at the assembly video to be able to see the assembly being simplified down. So we'll move on here to the demo for the fillets. So I'll go ahead and just open up the demo for that one quickly. And as Aldred was saying, you know, more and more of your commands are moving over to that fillet, to that property panel. And we can see here with the fillet command, when they moved it over, they've also now created the three different, or broken out the three different fillet types into their own command. So in the past, in the old dialog box, you would change between the type of fillet. Here you choose it right off the bat. So if I want to add in a, let's say a face fillet, I'll select the face fillet option, and that takes me into the properties panel just for the face fillet. As I was saying, you can drag these around, position them wherever you want. You can dock it to the side of the screen. You can dock it underneath another panel, so you can actually have your property panel there with your model browser. I like to normally have them just next to each other.
Carl?
Sorry?
Sorry, Carl, we just lost you there for a second.
Okay. So just kind of showing the displaying where, or showing how to dock, where you can dock those. So for the face fillet, you know, same process. Select your two faces, and it creates the fillet between them. You've got the apply option if you want to continue with creating more face fillets. But basically, they've broken that out, and it allows you to have a property panel for each fillet type now. So it simplifies it down. If you want to create a full round fillet, you don't have that big complicated fillet dialog box. Same thing with your standard fillet dialog box. This one has an extra little toolbar attached to it, and that little toolbar there is also dockable, and this allows you to change from doing something like a constant edge fillet, you know, which I could grab here and just add in a 2mm fillet there, to doing something like a variable radius fillet, again, to doing something like a variable radius, and you can go through and basically change your settings and selections from that little toolbar. Advanced properties, pulling that out gives you some functionality there within the fillet panel as well. So looking at that, just the one thing to be aware of there, if you're looking for face round, full round and face fillets, they're now in the drop down menu. Constraint status, let me just open up an assembly here. We can have a look in the assembly. When we open that up, this is actually a document setting that can be changed. So in this assembly here, when I've opened it up, the status is not showing. So you would go to Tools, Document Settings, and then on the Modeling tab, there's an option there to show constraint state in browser. So being a document setting, you can modify, or you may need to modify existing templates to enable that. But the out-of-the-box standard templates for 2020 have that already. Once Accept that, you'll see then it adds these status notifications to the browser. Now, if you go to the little menu and go to Display Preferences, you can choose to show the state here. You can switch it on and off here once it's been enabled in the settings. And as Aldred said, you can actually hide fully constrained components, and we'll see that we're left with the ones with the blank empty circle. Those still need constraints assigned to them. So as you constrain, those will start to drop out. So it's a nice quick way to see if you have anything in the assembly that is not fully constrained. Yeah, so that is it for the constraint status. The instance property, just to do a quick demo on how that works, we're going to go here to the instance properties assembly. And once that assembly is opened, we'll be able to have a look at how we can control those instance properties. So instance properties can be controlled either on each individual instance, or you can do it from the bill of materials. So we're going to have a look at these 4 motors here with the attached gearboxes. And so we'll grab I'm going to grab that motor, and you'll see here that we have 4 instances of that, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so what you can do is you can right-click on one of those instances and go down the menu to Instance Properties. Selecting that will bring up a R Properties panel, and you'll see that this R Properties panel pretty much looks like your custom R Properties tab. And you can either choose an existing property, or you can type in the new name for that instance property. Now, in the case of this, it's already been added. There's an instance property called Unique ID, so I'll choose that from the list. I could have typed that in, and I'm going to put in a value here of 0, and so we just go 0, 1 for that, so it's the first instance. And we'll click Add, and that adds that instance property. Now, if we have a look on the browser on the left, there's a little dot, a little dash, little dot after that instance, and that shows that it has an instance property assigned to it. And if we go into the bill of materials, we can have that instance property as a property in the bill of materials. So we'll go here to Structured. You'll see there's a unique ID property. This was added using the Add Custom R Property column. However, we're seeing that we have a quantity of 4 of these, and the unique ID varies. So what we can do here is we can break out this list so that it shows those 4 individual motors, and we can update the properties as needed. This is done with your row merge settings. There's a new option here to merge instance rows. If we unmerge those instance rows, we have our instance at the top, and if I scroll down, we'll see that I have an instance here at the bottom as well. So we can see we have an instance here, and we've got these ones, this one at the top. And so we can go ahead and start modifying and adding the instance values to each of those. And once those instance values have been updated, what you can do in the model, I'm just going to grab the final one here. In the drawing, you can then tag or add a balloon to each of those and pull that instance property into the balloon. So here, this is just a balloon with 2 properties in it. The first one being the item number, the second balloon being, the second property being that instance property. So we can see here, for each instance, we have that custom property or tag. In this case, it basically could be an item tag. So you can say, well, you know, get this on the screen nicely. It could be that, you know, motor number 2022-04 has failed and needs to be replaced. So quite easily you can look on the drawing and go, okay, it's the one on the far right hand side. that we need to maintain or do some maintenance on. And that can also be loaded up in the parts list as well as a property. So that's the instance properties. And we're going to head back to the slideshow just to end off with the last section, which is drawings, and then Q&A.
Thanks very much, Paul. Okay, so with the drawings, the enhancements that you find over there would be just viewing the drawing with different lighting styles. So I know sometimes when you put onto drawing, you want to kind of get it in the best light, and you can control that using your lighting style. So, you know, when you go change your lighting style in your part or assembly, it will then go and reflect in your 2D IDW or DWG as well. So you can control the view of that. Camera views can also now be used more efficiently in the drawing file as well. And if you haven't seen you've got kind of like drawing templates now, which you can pre-configure different drawing representations and views and dimensions. You can now start using the camera views in that as well as the 3D annotations. So if you are using 3D annotations, then you can now much more easily bring that into your Inventor IDW. And then just the last thing I'm going to take a look at is your dimensions. You can see there, they've just made some improvements with dimensioning around center lines and center marks, and you can more easily see, you know, sort of the dimension that you have put in over there. So once again, just making things a little bit quicker when it comes to taking up your parts or your assembly and bring it into your 2D drawing over there.
Yeah, I know we're running towards the end of our time, so I'll make this one quick. Just to show you what Eldred was talking about there with the drawing enhancements. There is some drawing automation which has also been brought into Inventor. So I'm going to open up a part here quickly. Just open up this one and just show what we have to start with. In this case here, we've got a couple of set of views. I double click on the front view. That takes us into a front view of the model with 3D annotation visibility linked to that view. We've got a side view. We have the same thing, a side view with those 3D annotations. And we have the same for top and ISO. Now, these views can now be linked into your drawing. So if you create a new drawing, we've got this pre-configured template here that we can use. We can grab that template and we can choose a specific layout. So I'm going to go here and grab this A2 layout, hit create, and it's going to ask what drawing we want to put down on that, what part we want to put down on that drawing. I'm going to go ahead here and just keep it with the default selection, which is the open file. It's OK. And so it places that view down into the model. We may need a little bit of cleanup. But what this is doing is it's basically, what the new thing is here is that when you double click on a view or when you place a base view down, we now have the ability to bring in the design view, which was there already, but we can now choose settings for that design view. So we can go to the settings option and we can choose to bring in the camera view as well as include 3D annotations. So those 3D annotations in the model are automatically brought through and placed down on your view in the model. So there was no need here to manually place them down. If I do this from scratch without using the template, you could go with base view, grab the, let's say, front view, go to settings. We can import the camera view and include the 3D annotations. It's OK, and that brought in this view down here, our front view. Okay, so that is just very quickly the enhancements there, just being able to create those layouts a lot quicker and bringing in those annotations from the 3D model. And we are running short on time here, so we'll open up for Q&A. And feel free to post your Q&A in the chat, or Eldred, if you're happy, we can guys can unmute and ask the questions.
Yeah, go for it.
We did have a chat that came through. Just apologies from one of the attendees. He had to leave, but he did mention, he said, looking forward to the new release. 2022 has been available since about March or April. So if you are still using an older release and you are still on subscription, you can go into your account and view your products there and view your 2022 downloads from your accounts. So 2022 is available. These features are available to you. I know they have had one small update, but it was a minor update. And yeah, it is available. If they have any questions, feel free to ask, and we can answer away.
Okay, if there are no questions, thanks very much for attending, guys. Thank you, Carl, for the demo. It was great. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see there's all our details. So we have got, 4 different branches. So whichever office you're in or whichever city you're in, you can get us on those different email addresses there. Or alternative, yeah, and we'll get back to you if any questions that you have that you might think of after this presentation. Well, thanks very much for attending, guys and girls.
Okay, thanks so much.
Cool.
Cheers.
Cheers.